Hey, it is Neil Gamer here today with several auto-win teams. It's basically one auto-win monster. Now, he has the reputation of being an OP all-around monster. That would be Kinky. He's actually not that great in RTA anymore, and he does have his limitations on siege defense, but for siege offense, he's arguably the single best monster in the game, and certainly the best monster out of all of the Elemental Nat 5s and the LD4s, other than maybe Feng, but right now I do find Kinky to be a little bit more reliable than Feng. So, you can see the build of one of my Kinkys here. I did say one, I'm sorry guys, I've got four, and that's how this video started. Yes guys, I'm not free to play, but more than that, I just got crazy lucky. I happened to pull Kinky 3 straight LD Lightnings in a row. I had one from before, it was kind of crazy. I wound up with 4. Once I wound up with 4, I had to figure out how to get 4 teams built for him, and that's how we got to this video. So, we are going to start with the best team that I found for him, which is Kinky, Riley, you can see the stats right here, and then Nana. This team has not lost for me once yet. I don't know how often I've used it, but I've used it a lot. You can see the stats on the Nana and the Riley. I mean, they're good stats. For my account, these are good stats, but there's nothing crazy on the Nana and the Riley. The Kinky stats are one of my stronger sets. These rune sets are actually very strong. The key to Kinky, guys, is Violent Rune. Now, you guys can see in the background, I'm giving you a more detailed look at the runes of each of the monsters, and then we're going to look at some actual gameplay while I talk about this team a little bit more. This is something I'm going to be trying new for some of the auto-win videos, just to try and help things move along. So, in the meantime, with the Kinky, if he is on Despair, what I found is that you'll still usually win, but the fights can go for a really long time. Now, the other key to Kinky that a lot of people don't always rune him this way is that he actually does not need a crazy amount of HP. You're not going to bring Kinky into monsters that can just basically one-shot him like a Mo Long. You wouldn't usually do that unless you have the Nana. By the way, Nana Kinky Riley, that can be brought into a Mo Long. But usually what you're going to do is bring Kinky into monsters that multi-hit, which gives him the automatic revenge, and then it does help if he has some sort of sustain with him. Now, ideally, there's also going to be cleanse, because the nemesis to Kinky is heal block. So, you put the Kinky on Violent Runes, you don't go overboard on the HP, you make sure he has enough to survive, and you put the rest of it into offensive potential, and then you build some supports around him. All of the teams that we're going to look at today are basically going to be with that concept. So, you guys can see this is a Guild War against Mithril. This was previously recorded. This is me using the team against Mithril. And as you can see right here, so it looks like this one is a, was that Celia, man, Light Pony. I'm drawing a blank on her name. Eleanor. So that's Eleanor Celia Theamars. We come in with the Kinky, Nana, and Riley. Now, the Vivishell does actually get the, the change thing. She changes Kinky's HP. But there's not enough damage on the rest of the team. Fortunately, we got the stun on the Theamars, but it didn't really matter. Honestly, even if Kinky dies at that point, that's why the Nana is there. Kinky would be revived. Riley would heal him right back up to full health. And that's why I said this team is just basically OP. The weakness of this team, I guess, would be if somehow the Riley died twice, or if you brought it into something with Oblivion. So you definitely don't want to go into like a Tessarian, for example, because if the Tessarian happens to, I don't know, revenge proc on the Nana while your immunity is down and then kills the Kinky, you're dead, because the only damage on this team is obviously from the Kinky. Nana can do a little bit of damage, Riley can do a little bit of damage, but you won't kill anything without the Kinky. So the idea of this team is basically just protect the Kinky. So you can see that this fight is over. We're going to jump forward up to the next guild fight. And this one is going to be brought in against more of a CC team. So we have Fire Ryu, Belinus, and Fuki. There's some big damage. Again, this is Mithril, so you know the runes on the enemy side are really strong. We got a Despair Stun on the Kinky. We got another Despair Stun on the Nana. Now, there's the Violent runes come into play with the Kinky. One of the big reasons that Violent is so important is so that he can actually proc out of that CC. And also, if he does get a random defense break, despite being max resistance, a lot of defenses will be max accuracy. Even when they're not max accuracy, they're still going to land some stuff on him, so it allows him to proc out of those debuffs. Now, right here, you can see this one went kind of ugly. Everything got beat up, everything was stunned, defense breaks all over the place, but as soon as I got that first kill and I put the second orb on Nana, you know there's no way they're actually going to kill the Kinky, 3 times from this point. Here we're going into the Ryu, actually, because we want to get that extra orb on the Nana, and then obviously we're going to win this 3v1. So we'll move forward again here to the final of the Guild War fights. In this case, I actually went into a KBO, Kamun Odin Bastet. Now, this one is a little bit more YOLO because, I mean, theoretically, the Odin can hit anything. If Odin were to snipe the Riley and then Perna were to proc a few times and kill the Riley out after that, I might lose. But I mean, so much would have to go wrong for me at that point. And then you can see right there, I actually went into the Perna first. I didn't really care if the Odin one-shot something or not, because at that point I've got my second orb. And this is, I'm sorry, I said KBO. This is Odin, obviously, it's Odin Bastet Perna, not Kamun Odin Bastet. But we go into the Perna, and at that point, we're getting an extra orb on the Nana, and we're good to go. So, you guys can see how this is running in the background. I'll just jump forward a little bit right here, and you can see, I think at this point we drop the Odin for his first life. Nana's still at full orbs. As soon as we get a couple of defense breaks right here, the Kinky's just going to clear everything out. Now, I said at the start of this video we were going to look at 4 comps for Kinky. I actually lied a little bit, not intentionally, but it's really 3. So what I forgot is, although I have 4 Kinkys, I made 2 of the same team. These teams are built nearly identically. The Vigor is going to be on a slow build, high HP. The second Vigor actually has much more efficient runes. So if we come over to this one, this is a crit damage Vigor, much more efficient runes, but you can see the speed's about the same. All of the other stats are about the same, just one of them's on crit damage, one's on crit rate. In both cases, it really works about the same. The Lulu builds are about the same for both teams as well. I mean, nearly identical. I think the exact same speed, same HP, same defense, all max resistance. One thing I found for Siege offense, I really do like a lot of resistance builds. I know resistance is a lie, guys, but it's not a lie. Resistance is a stat with less value than most other stats. If you bring in, for example, the team that we're facing right now, this is Karnal, Wusa, Kinky. If I bring in a max resistance team against this particular comp, that Karnal, I have to assume he's on max accuracy, which means my max resistance is irrelevant. But the Wusa just has some, like, oops, there's some accuracy in their type runes. Wusa's built on HP, speed, defense, maybe also has resistance, but nobody puts accuracy on their Wusa. So the resistances get rid of most of those disruptive random skill 1 sleeps. The Kinky needs so many stats that the odds of him having more than 40 or 50 accuracy are really low, so that's going to reduce. Remember, he doesn't have 100% activation on his skill 1 to begin with. So that's going to reduce the defense breaks a lot. So if you have the rune depth to do resistance builds, it is really useful on Siege offense. If you don't have the rune depth, then it's not the most important thing for most builds. Now, as far as this goes, we're going to go ahead and bring in the Vigor, Kinky, Lulu. We're going to take a look at how this team works. So again, same concept as the Nana Riley team. The biggest difference here is that we've got 2 water units, so we use this team, obviously we use this team in 4-star bases a lot, but if you want to, I did actually use this in a 5-star base in Siege today. If you want to use it outside of a 4-star base, the main thing is you want to use it where the main enemy threat is fire, because that drives all the attacks into your Kinky right here. So, like in this case right here, the Wusa can do some damage, but for the way this team is built, the Wusa is not going to kill anything. And the Kinky obviously can do some damage, but I've got double sustain units. So as long as I've only got 1 monster attacking, like my Vigor, for example, then I can go heavy into this Karnal right here. The Kinky's really not going to do anything. In this case, we're actually able to drop the Karnal out really quick. And it's a 3v2 with tons of sustain, and we have the Kinky counters. Now again, we are talking about the most OP Siege offense monster outside of some LD5s, so you would expect it to be fairly easy to build comps that work for him. But what I have found is that if you just throw him into any random comp, your mileage may vary type of deal. He's not going to win every single fight for you automatically. You do have to put some intelligent comps around him. The double water with double sustain, double defense break, you have some immunity, you have some cleanse. This is a very well balanced comp, and then you do the crit damage build on the Vigor, and you've got big damage output from both the Vigor and the Kinky. Again, that Kinky was built nearly the same way as my other Kinky. So all of the Kinkys I shoot for pretty much the exact same stats. I'm going to show you guys the third team that I came up with. I'm just going to pick Guilty here at random. We'll show you the stats on this Kinky as well. So this one is actually on Will Runes. The Vigor's got the Destroy on this team. Like I said, I couldn't get the stats I wanted with Destroy on all of them. But I shoot for 40 to 50 accuracy minimum. I shoot for some recovery and life drain on the artifact if I can, some additional damage. If you're running with an attack buffer, attack up is really useful. About 21 to 2300 attack is the lowest that I found, makes him really effective. The speed actually matters less. So you see all my builds are fairly slow. He doesn't have to be crazy fast because he's doing a lot of work with revenges. Instead, what you want to focus on is lots of attack, and then I shoot for 30k HP. If I wind up a little bit over, great, but I feel like 30k HP, 1k defense is sufficient for him because I'm running him with supports. So we're going to come down here now, and we're going to take a look at our fourth auto win team, technically third because two of them are the exact same, so it's our third auto win team. This one is Feng, Amelia, Kinky. This is actually the weakest of my teams. Despite having two of the most OP siege monsters out there, this team does not have any direct death prevention. It's not specifically that the team is weak, it's that you can't bring it into as many stuff. And that's the last thing we're actually going to talk about, is where you can bring this in. But in this case, you have the Feng, who is going to be much lower HP if you put him in a damage build. You have the Amelia, who is vulnerable to getting one shot by ignore defense type stuff. And then you have less sustain overall because it's really just the Fang doing your sustain. So there is a lot less that you can bring this team into. Now the upshot is this team will actually kill much faster. You can see how quick my Fang just killed right there. And then of course, obviously, being on a defense scaling team, this is really good to bring into things like the Savannah that we're facing over here. In this case, we may lose the Amelia right here. We wouldn't lose the match no matter what. Well, if Fang keeps proccing, we definitely won't lose anything. In this case, we might have actually lost the Amelia, but it wouldn't have mattered because at that point, the Fang and the Kinky were enough. The Amelia is there, really, the defense buffs are going to give the Fang some extra damage, and then the cleanses and so forth, but once you get the first enemy monster down, you're good. Now, I'll show you the stats on the Fang. I actually build all of my Fangs nearly the exact same. This is probably the weakest of my Fangs, and yes, guys, I do have 4 Fangs as well. Again, not free to play, but of the monsters that I summon, the only dupe that I've, to date, the only dupe that I've ever actually deviled is Fang. I did some through Fusion, but I deviled all four Fangs I ever summoned. I deviled them all. And then all of the Kinkies I absolutely built immediately. Strongest 2 siege monsters outside of LD5s in the game. Take that back, Martina. Martina's probably stronger. Second and third. I said strongest throughout the video. Second and third. To be fair, Martina's probably stronger. Second and third strongest monsters throughout the game. Anyway, this is the Fang build. You can see roughly the same stats. This is the Amelia build. Again, I like a lot of resistance for these types of teams in particular because you're definitely taking turn 2. So you want to be able to go into an enemy that's trying to debuff you, take your attack bar, all that stuff, and at least have some chances to survive. So max resistance on all of them, a little bit of accuracy, and generally just super tanky. So that's the build for that team. Now, last thing on this video, let's talk a little bit about where you can and cannot bring these teams into. So far, I have not found anything, not a single thing that I cannot bring the Kinky, Riley, Nana team into, even when the enemy team is like super OP, gonna cleave me, gonna drop something, whatever. You have the Nana Orb for revive, you have the cleanse, you have all that stuff. With that said, if you ever run into a Tessarian Molong, I would think twice about bringing that team in because the Tessarian can be built on revenge, which would cause it to potentially Oblivion the Nana, also can Oblivion your Kinky. And then the Molong has some snipe potential. So, Molong by himself, you can generally bring that Riley version of the team into. But Molong plus Tessa, or really just Tessa in general, I might not take that team in. Now, the other teams are a little bit trickier. So, if we take a look at something like this Ciara, Orion, Perna right here, I would not bring in the Fang team for sure, because you have no revive, and the Orion's definitely going to take turn 1, so if the Fang gets defense broken, then the Ciara will bomb it, and your Fang is gone, and now you're in a 2v3 situation, which is not ideal. You actually still could theoretically win, but definitely not ideal. However, I mentioned that I used the Vigor, Kinky, Lulu in Siege today. I actually used it against this team. Because the flip side of that is that the Perna is not going to kill the Kinky, even if its defense broken, and a Ciara without an attack buff is not going to, if you built your units right, the Ciara without an attack buff is not going to be able to one-shot either Kinky or Lulu, any of them, Vigor, Kinky, or Lulu. And then you have the Lulu cleanse. So worst case scenario, Ciara bombs the Lulu. You don't get the cleanse, but you still get the Vigor heal, and you get the Vigor crit resist, and then you have the Kinky damage. And the nice thing here is you're going to be able to kill that Ciara relatively quickly because the Kinky is going to revenge every time she goes with her S3. So the Vigor Kinky Lulu is not going to be safe. Where is that one not going to be safe? It's not going to be safe against Odins, for one thing, or anything else that ignores defense. It's probably not going to be safe against overly heavy strip teams, such as in the replay that you saw earlier with the Ryu. Something like this also, where you have the Praha strip into the Savannah with the Carcano. In this case, I'd be worried basically if the Savannah one-shots your Lulu right out the gate, you're going to lose. So that double water team where you're looking at Vigor, Kinky, Lulu, not great to bring into Savannahs, not great to bring into most heavy win threats, terrible to bring into an Odin. Whereas, I think it would actually be fairly safe against this Tessa. Even though, yes, the Tessa is going to keep hitting the Kinky and keep trying to Oblivion the Kinky, you do have your immunity and your cleanse from the Lulu. You're obviously going to target the Tessa first, and because you do have heavier damage output with the crit damage Vigor, you should be able to get the Tessa down fairly quick. You also have heal block from the Vigor. So, generally speaking, without going through every single defense, of the 4 variations of this team, or, well, 3, I keep saying 4, guys, I apologize, of the 3 variations of this team that I've shown you, the double water units, try to avoid heavy wind units that have defense break or ignore defense. The Nana version, try to avoid anything that has Oblivion. So I've been saying Tessarian, but Isis would also be another fair one to be concerned with. Because remember, you don't actually have Riley as an OP support unit, but Riley doesn't actually give you constant immunity or long-term immunity and doesn't have that much cleanse. So Oblivion is the threat to that team. And then lastly, for the Feng team, try to avoid anything that has ignore defense regardless of element. And then I would be more comfortable bringing that one into a Savannah because you have the Feng defense lead and the Feng's not going to get defense broken by the Savannah. However, I would avoid something like a Ciara Savannah or, again, anything that's got ignore defense because the Feng is really vulnerable. And that's it, guys. There you go. So that is 3 auto-win teams for Kinky if you're lucky enough to have them. I know a lot of you guys don't, but if you're lucky enough to have them, any of those 3 teams is going to work really, really well around your Kinky. They're going to be teams that you can bring in pretty much every siege and every guild war, and you get to take advantage of what is basically one of the 3. I keep dropping him down, right? But realistically, Martina for sure is going to be better, and then Feng, it's debatable. I actually would take Kinky over Feng at this point for siege offense, and certainly for siege defense. So maybe the second best of the non-LD5s. Anyway, guys, on that note, as always, hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate you watching. Good luck getting kinky with your monsters. Yeah, he said it. And we'll catch you on the next video.